Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Dear learners, welcome to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University online video session. Today we are going to discuss first year BA English, compulsory English 101 as well as compulsory English FYBA 102, unit number 5 and block number 1. Let us see today's session, that is about the Verger, a short story of W. Somerset Maugham. FYBA English Compulsory 101 and FYBCOM BCENG 102. These are the codes of this paper. And today we have to discuss again the topic of the short story in a very short span, and afterwards we are going to focus on the story itself, that is written by great short story writer W. Somerset Maugham. So let's go for the understanding of the short story. First of all, we are in a compulsion to see what is the short story, what is the definition of the short story. The short story is an imaginary prose with a few characters and single event. The story ends with a sudden twist, conclusion or a shocking end. This is the actual definition of short story, which could be implemented in almost all the short stories, either Indian English literature, American literature or British literature. Characters are lifelike. The setting, the description of the story helps the readers to visualize it, and the theme, the central idea and the main belief, the main message the author wants to suggest, that would be explained over here in this short story. Most of the short stories focus on short span, one single event or one single event that happens in 2 day, 3 day or a short period of time. This is the actual structure of the short story that you need to focus, you need to remember in your mind. And now we are onwards going to discuss the actual short story over here. About author, we need to learn any work of art is important due to the author's writing, and that's why we need to discuss the author first. Here it is W. William Somerset Maugham, a great novelist, playwright and short story writer. He was born on January 25, 1874 in Paris in France. So naturally it seems that he is the French person, but is writing in English. That's why he is the French author, but he is writing in English literature, and that's why we are learning his short stories that are written, which are written in English literature. His father was a lawyer handling the legal affairs of the British Embassy in Paris. His most renowned work is Of Human Bondage, where he himself had written most of the things about his bad childhood, about his problems of early childhood, and we can say that was the work of autobiographical element. You can find the autobiographical details from this novel. His unhappy childhood and experiences as a medical student, which were described in Of Human Bondage. During World War I and II, Somerset Maugham was in intelligence services of British government. So it is also one of the most renowned work that he had done during his career. His novel The Moon and the Sixpence is on the life of the famous painter Paul Gauguin. Maugham is following Anton Chekhov, the famous short story writer of the Russian literature. He is very much influenced by Anton Chekhov. That's why it is written over here. The first person story, his technique of short story writing, that also you should keep in your mind, that what was his technique. His technique of short story writing was first person narrative technique, and Maugham's major collections were Orientation, The Casuarina Tree, Cosmopolitans, The Creatures of Circumstances. These were his collection of short stories which could be found in his work. Here today we are going to discuss the short story that is known as the Verger. If you have seen it, the name of the short story is written in the first slide over here, front page. The Verger, it means that the person who helps in the church. The Verger is the story of unexpected twist at the end of the story. Actually, the Verger is one of the designations in the church. The protagonist, the hero of the story is Albert Edward Foreman. He was doing the job in one of the church at England. It was known as St. Peter's Church at Neville Square, and he was a verger over there. His services was from 16 years he had been doing the duty of the verger. He was very confident and he would not lose the job. He was very confident that he could do everything in the church, and as he had been in that church from 16 years, so he knew how well he should do his duties. He was very much dedicated, as well as he was a regular person also, and doing almost all the duties very well in a good manner with efficiency and good efforts. He was totally illiterate who could not read or write. Now, apart from all this story, there is one important thing, that as he was doing the duty of the verger, he did not know what to write and how to read. The natural, genuine, practical learning, that also he was lacking. He was lacking in the fundamental learning also. He was completely illiterate, and he had no need to learn also, because the duty of the verger in the church is to put the clothes in a proper manner, put the robes, the priests and the greater persons of the church, they wear the robes, and verger's duty is to put the cupboards in order, put the things in on order, and keep almost all the robes, the clothes and the things of the church in proper order. That was only his duty. So there isn't any need to do the learning and reading and writing, and that is why he was an illiterate person. As from the beginning of his job, he was an illiterate person, and he hadn't learned anything during his 16 years duty also, because it was not required anywhere. That's why he didn't take the education. He was totally illiterate who could not read or write. Now the change and the twist comes over here from this part. There was a new vicar who was appointed at St. Peter's Church. At Peter's Church, there comes the new position, new father, new person who was handling, new administrator who was handling the church, and he was shocked to know that verger is illiterate. He called Albert Edward Foreman. His name was Albert Edward Foreman, who was the verger of the church. He gave him the notice and said, either you start learning, either you learn, read and write, or leave the job of the verger. We should give the job to another person who would be a literate person. Now the church needs the literate verger instead of an illiterate verger. So we should terminate you from your job if you do not read or write, if you do not learn basic reading and writing. You should be a literate person at least. Illiterate verger would not work in the church now. This was the new vicar's demand. The new vicar believed that illiteracy at church would be dangerous. The new vicar, he was an energetic man of early 40s who focused over everything in the church with his finger in every pie. He wanted to put everything in order. He wanted to change every situation of the church, every old things in a new format with new innovatives, with new incentives, and that is why he found that the verger is illiterate. The church would not be that much efficient enough if the verger hadn't studied. So he was wishing that if the verger comes over here, if the position of the verger is here, there should be a literate person in the church. The new vicar wanted everything at its best. He knew that Verger did his duties well, yet he said that it was too much necessary to be a literate person at the church. He believed that the Verger must be a literate person, otherwise the duty of the Verger should be stopped and there should be a new verger who would be appointed as a literate verger of the church. The verger accepted that it was too late to do the studies now at this much ripe age. He believed that he could not do the study at this much ripe age. You know that the duties of the verger was from 16 years. He was appointed as the verger 16 years ago, and now again he was forced by this new vicar to take the education from the beginning. So it was quite tough for him to learn everything, to learn reading and writing at this ripe age. So he was very much depressed and disappointed. He regretted that what could be done. He thought that better if I am not able to study anything, if I am not able to learn anything, it would be better if I leave the job and I would do certain other job if I get in future period of time. So he was very much determined to leave the job of the verger. I need to tell you over here that it was shockingly only, he was very much shocked because of this, and still he had to leave the job of the verger. In fact, he thought that it would be better if he leaves the job. Look, he thought that it would be better if he leaves the job. The idea of the verger foreman, Albert Edward Foreman, was, I am too old a dog to learn new tricks. Look, he thought that I am of very much ripe age and it is now impossible for me to learn anything new. So he thought that let me leave the job, otherwise I will get any another new opportunity to do any other job and relieve from the tension. That was the only idea in his mind, and that's why he focused on that idea and he was very much determined to leave the job. He lost his job. Walking along the street, he had an intense desire to smoke as he was very much disappointed. He had lost the job of 16 years, and because of this shocking 16 years job, this big shock, he was very much disappointed and he thought that let me have one cigarette to smoke, but he could not find any tobacco shop in the street. The street was completely serene, silence, and without any shops. It was an empty street, and he had an idea to open a tobacco shop in the street. As he was very much ready to smoke the cigarettes, to smoke the tobacco, he thought that if there isn't any shop in this street, let me open one shop. Soon he opened his first shop of tobacco, and within a few years he had number of shops and lot of money. He became a successful businessman, and as a tobacconist he introduced more than 10 tobacco shops of his ownership. He went to the bank to deposit the money. The bank manager told him that he had already deposited around 30,000 pounds with the bank. And the bank manager advised him to invest money in stock and shares, but Foreman denied and said he trusted him, and the bank manager told him to sign certain documents, but he refused as he could not do anything with learning. Now look, as he had left the job of the verger, he had an idea to open the tobacco shop, and as he had the idea to open the tobacco shop, he was successful in his first shop also. He opened the tobacco shop in an empty street and it became successful. He was a successful shopkeeper. Then again after some days he thought that let me open one another shop in one another street, and in that way he opened 1, 2, 3, 4 more than 10 shops, and he had become a successful businessman of tobacco shops. So this way he left the job of the verger in the church, the mere small job of the verger, the secondary job of the verger, and he had become the first category person of the society. He became the successful, rich, powerful, popular, prosperous businessman of the society. The bank manager told him to sign certain documents, but he refused as he could not do anything with learning. Now look what happened. As he had become the successful businessman, he went to the bank to deposit some money, but at the bank manager told him that either you should deposit the money in the bank, do one thing, invest some of the money in stock and shares. And the verger, who was known as Albert Foreman, he said that no, I am not interested in stock and shares, but I am interested in saving the money in the bank because I trust you. You can take almost all the responsibilities of my documents and my accounts, savings or current, whatever my accounts are. And the bank manager told him that okay sir, I will take the responsibility, but you need to sign some of the documents so that I can transfer the money and I can do certain things on behalf of you. Edward Albert Foreman was ready to clear the document, but at the same time he was illiterate. We know that he is illiterate from the beginning of the story, and he said that okay, I am ready to sign the documents, but as I am illiterate, I would put a thumb on the documents. The manager was shocked to know this. He said, good God, man, what would you be now if you had been able to learn everything? If you are illiterate and you are this much rich and popular, then what would happen to you if you would have taken some of the school knowledge, some of the schooling, some of the mere beginning basic learning? Then what would be your position? And Foreman replied that I would be a verger of St. Peter's Naval Scare if I would have been a learned person. It is quite topsy-turvy. It's such a straightforward answer of the question that if a person would have been literate person, he would have been a mere employee at the church, and as he was an illiterate person, he became the first category businessman, the businessman of the society, the respected, reputed man of the society. The reply is very much of importance. As Albert Edward Foreman would have been literate, he would have been the verger only. That was his answer. So this is merely a very topsy-turvy, upside-down story that shows the truth of the society. It shows that though the people are not literate, they are not having the basic force of education, still they could get the success and they could make the money and they could become the successful citizens of the respected, reputable society. Learning has nothing to do with the incentives and innovative ideas of an individual person. Entrepreneur is a different thing. That is what is the story tells it over here. Generally, it is believed that literacy brings success. Look, people believed that if a person is educated, if he has taken the education of first category, if he had always ranked first in the classroom, if he had taken the lectures and if he had studied, he or she had studied well, will ultimately would get the success. But this is not the case with Verger, as Somerset Maugham displayed over here. But in the case of Verger, the things are quite different. The things are quite topsy-turvy. Success and literacy have no connection at all. Education and success has no connection, because it shows over here that even an uneducated person, Edward Albert Foreman, Verger, had become successful, rich and famous, popular and reputed without being a literate person even. Educated persons become officers, clerks, teachers, employees in general, while the uneducated persons also become businessmen, industrialists, and successful, reputed people of the society. Knowledge is always enslaved to power and wealth. This is an important theme of the story. The whole story depends on this important theme that is in bold words over here behind me. Knowledge is always enslaved to power and wealth. Wealth and power would control the person who is a knowledgeable guy. The knowledgeable person would be controlled by the power and wealth. That was what is displayed over here in this sentence. Now, Somerset Maugham never tried to teach the moral lessons in his stories. Still, there are certain themes which are displayed over here. He always turned the moral lessons upside down in ironical endings of his stories. Look, here there is an ironical end when he discusses that uneducated person, illiterate person also gets the success, power, money, wealth, and even reputation and popularity, though he was not educated. The themes are mentioned over here is theme of appearance, opportunity, dedication, independence, humility, creativity, innovative, incentive ideas, and sudden growth. As for example, let us discuss the theme. First theme is about appearance. So you know that in the beginning of the story, the verger seems to be quite short, small, unimportant character of the story, and finally in the end you would come to know that the verger, who seems to be the most unimpressive person, is the protagonist of the story. Opportunity plays an important role over here in the whole story. When you try to study the story of the opportunity, that verger had taken the opportunity to be illiterate and had taken the opportunity to open the shop in an empty street where there wasn't any tobacco shop, and again he found one another street where there wasn't any tobacco shop. Then afterwards, continuously he started growing, making the tobacco shops in empty streets and finding the empty streets, and in that way he became the richest person, the businessman of the society. So opportunity plays the important role in the story of the verger. In the same way, dedication is important over here. Dedication shows that how verger had been so much dedicated in his duty of the putting the clothes in the cupboard and putting the things in order in the church, and unfortunately still there was the dedication in his work, still he was terminated from the church. So dedication plays an important role in the story, but still it shows the situation in a topsy-turvy manner when he was removed from his job of the verger. Independence also plays an important role in the story, as Verger had become the independent bird and he got complete success due to his independence and due to his creativity and incentive ideas. The idea to create the tobacco shop in an empty street, this was the most important deliberate idea which created the story a concrete one. Sudden growth shows that how Verger had become how he had become the rich businessman, though he hadn't taken any school education, neither he had taken any basic education, still he became the rich person. The style and diction of Somerset Maugham would be ultimately asked in the questions of the theme and style and summary of the story. Simple, lucid and ironic style. This is the most important technique he had taken in his writing of the short stories. There isn't any figurative language, neither any poetic beauty in the story, but the story gives the sound, it gives the voice of rational attitude. The whole story shows a sequential rational growth from the beginning till the end of the story, and his narration is under thin disguise. Look how Somerset Maugham had done the narration, that is very much important. In the beginning of the story, we never knew that the verger would be the quite rich big businessman when we were in the beginning of the story, but still the story had accustomed us, the story had kept us, the story had caught us in its strong vibes, and that's why we were in a condition to focus on the whole story continuously without any distraction. The protagonist with emotional level and interpretative level and cultural level, all these three things are displayed in the story. How the protagonist grew, what was his emotional level when he had been at the church as the verger. We knew that he was very quiet and calm and composed and happy as an employee, happy and satisfied employee, emotionally healthy. But as he got the emotional shock that he would be kicked out after 16 years of his job, he was very much disappointed. Again, there was a stage of interpretation and cultural level, and finally he survived and he became the winner also. He conquered the situation and he became the businessman. So certain kinds of stratas of Verger's mind, Edward Albert Foreman's mind, the stratas of his levels of psyche, his beginning, his middle part, how he left the job, how he was disappointed, why he was regretted, why he repented, all these things became very much important to be studied in your answer, that you have to mention in a sequential way. The story with maxims, proverbs, and upside down characters. These are the three important things which are mentioned in Somerset Maugham when he had taken the story with maxim, the story with a simple note, the story with a single idea, story with proverb and upside down characters, in the sense the character grows in the beginning, but afterwards we saw that the character had grew at its such a big height, so that you can say that as there are Bildungsroman novels, in the same way this is a Bildungsroman kind of a short story where the protagonist develops, grows. In Bildungsroman technique also the protagonist grows, and in the same way here also we can see that the protagonist grows as the story develops. Now this is the end of the story of the Verger, and you have to read the whole story. Goodbye all, and we shall learn the next story again in the next session. Have a great day.